Okay, so I eat public speaking for breakfast. Really fun title. We've been calling this whole webinar this since the very beginning, um, and I wanted to call it this because speaking in public and standing on a stage is a very bold action. So warrants a bold title. I'm going to start this with a picture. So a lot of you know me as Gregory Caswell, Executive Director of the Alberta Emerald Foundation. What few of you know about me, if and what no one knows about me if we haven't met yet, is that I actually have a whole other world of mine where I'm actually a theater artist. I've been a playwright, I've been an actor, I've been a producer, and I've also appeared on stage in high heel shoes. So this is an image that if you Google me, it's actually one of the first things that come up. This is from my time in a group that I started back in 2015 called Man Up. And the whole idea behind Man Up was that it was going to be five guys in high heel shoes that tackled the patriarchy by addressing the four pillars of masculinity, sexuality, vulnerability, and authenticity. And let me tell you, the 5 years that we were in existence was an absolute whirlwind. We started at the Edmonton Fringe Festival in 2015. We were held over, got five-star reviews, standing ovations, and that kicked off 5 years of creating brand new shows, performing at Pride festivals around the province, gaining quite a bit of a following, and resulting in this picture where I was actually featured as a top 40 under 40 by Avenue Magazine in 2018. And they say that this is one of their favorite pictures of top 40 history. So thank you. Um, the reason that I bring this up is that Man Up, uh, we had many shows over the course of our time together, but we always went with the exact same four pillars to dictate what we were talking about. And this is going to come into my talk as we go. But I think it's important also to note that this talk is based on a very good book that I highly recommend to each of you to pick up if you're interested in exploring public speaking more. I use this to develop this talk and also the webinar that we held last year. It's called TED Talks, the official TED Guide to Public Speaking by Chris Anderson. And the reason that I loop this into the previous picture at this point in the talk is that it was very interesting reading this book because a lot of what Chris was talking about were actual tactics that I was using in the development of our shows for Man Up. And these were the ones that resonated with me. So first things first, there is no one way to deliver a great talk. A good way to think about this is that think about the amount of different genres of movies there are out there. There's lots of amazing movies within different genres, which means that there's lots of different ways to tell stories, which means that your talk doesn't necessarily have to be exactly the same as somebody else's. Also, anyone with an idea worth sharing can give a powerful talk. A lot of us walk around feeling like we're everyday people, but our everyday is actually quite exceptional to others. But the important thing is to say something meaningful. So you're on a stage, the whole reason that you're there is to relay something to an audience. In the case of Man Up, the meaningful thing was the role of gender and how it was affecting our personal lives and how it affected the lives of the people in the audience. And that was meaningful. It was also very easy to talk about because we were passionate about it. The ideas just came, we did our research, we became experts in the subject matter, and that created a strong connection for us and an ability to share with our audience. Your only real job in giving a talk is to say something valuable and to say it authentically in your own unique way. Your goal is not to replicate the great speakers you have seen or heard before, it's to be you. It's okay to be nervous and to stumble. Julian said that already. You can make some mistakes, and that actually can work in your benefit. It shows that you're human. And as soon as you let that guard down, your audience connects with you even more. And let me tell you, we stumbled a lot in our high heel shoes. It is not an easy thing to do. Another thing to point out here is that I think because we're so used to watching these TED Talks online now, things go viral. We see the audiences rise to their feet. We see the clicks or the views underneath getting into the millions, and that all of a sudden does something to us psychologically, even if it's just a small presentation that we're doing in front of a small group of people, that it's now the expectation that we replicate that. But it's important to remember that that talk is that talk. And for you to replicate that or want to have the same experience is going to not serve you very well, because you're not then delivering your talk, you're trying to do somebody else's. So just something to think about. Let Brene Brown be Brene Brown. So you don't need to bring your audience to your feet. It's really great when that happens, but actually a conversational style is best in most situations. If you know how to speak to a group of people over dinner, it's really the same sort of thing. You know how to speak publicly. So think of the audience as your friend. And I will point out right now that a lot of this public speaking is actually taking place on platforms like this, where it's a person on a screen talking to an audience. Even though we have over 20 people joining us for the webinar today, it's probably best to actually think that you're talking to a single person in this situation rather than a full audience of people. It's a different experience. So your number one goal as a speaker is to say something that matters deeply to you and rebuild it in the minds of your audience. That something is the idea, a mental construct your listener can hold on to, walk away with, value, in some way be changed by. In Man Up situation, we were talking about masculinity, toxic masculinity, gender equality, gender roles. Those were all things that we wanted our audience to walk away with. It's easy to feel as though there is nothing unique and remarkable to say because you have firsthand experience of your life and work. To an outsider, though, what you perceive as simplicity can be quite complex. So important. You might feel right now that you have nothing to say, but in actuality, your experience is very different to somebody else's. Even probably the person who thinks that they're the least interesting person will have a story to share that will impact somebody else. So everyone has a story to share, even you. Remember, it's not necessary to provide a background of your work or organization, as the host will introduce you. So don't waste your time on that. Focus on the idea that you need to get across. So let's talk about developing your talk. So a great talk is a journey the speaker and the audience take together. Be your audience's tour guide. I put that in green for a reason, because I love this. Know where you're going and where you're taking them. So picture yourself in a museum, an art museum, the Louvre. It's your first time there. You're excited to see the Mona Lisa, but you know that there's a lot of great art along the way. You join a tour. That tour guide has actually been in that museum for a lengthy period of time. They've been trained, they know where the paintings are, they know what the stories are behind those paintings. You, as the person entering into the Louvre, this is your first time there, and you're there to experience it. So that tour guide's role is to take you through the exhibits and to tell you stories about the paintings so that you leave having had an amazing experience at the Louvre. If they decided to take you randomly through the museum with no real reason or rhyme to it, you're probably going to disconnect from the group and just go on your own tour. But if they're taking you through and guiding you, you're going to follow along with them. So think of yourself and your topic as the Louvre. A good way to do this, to organize your thoughts, is as you're doing your research or your writing process, figure out your key revelation points, and then that's how you can structure it. Which brings us to structuring your talk. So you're going to want to start with an introduction. Mine in this example was to chat about my experience with Man Up and also a little bit about the book. Provide context, why this issue matters. Main concepts, the idea. Practical implications, the consequences or results associated or implied when putting a plan or scenario into real life practice. And finally, the conclusion, wrapping it all up. It's the gift that you're giving to your audience. Julian said, and, but, therefore. Another way to look at it is what, so what, now what. Now, this is what you're going to want to avoid. So avoid using language your audience doesn't have access to. If you start to use your language or concepts, assumptions, values, you will fail. So you want to start building your idea in your audience's mind from a common ground. So know if you're presenting to first timers, know if you're presenting to a panel of experts, because your language is going to change to assist them in understanding what it is that you're getting across. Avoid the ramble, so make sure that you're prepared, give some aha moments, be the tour guide. The audience is giving up their time, so use it wisely. And avoid the inspiration performance. We talked about this before. Of course, it's amazing. And of course, it's the goal that we want everyone to go, wow, my life is forever changed. That can actually serve against you if that's what you're focusing on. Stay true to you. Don't make a standing ovation or an audience adoration your goal. So ways that you can claim your audience's attention, deliver a dose of drama. Your first words really do matter. You can show a picture of yourself in some high heels. Why not? You can ignite some curiosity. You can show a compelling slide, video, or object. And you can tease a little bit about what you're going to get to, but don't give it all away. Otherwise, what's the point for the next 8 to 10 minutes that you're there? And then how should we end it? So you want to end on like the oomph note. So here's some suggestions. It's called the camera pullback. So share a bigger picture, a broader set of possibilities implied by your work. Give a call to action. What do you want your audience to do? Personal commitment, a call of action to yourself. So I went through this experience. I now know this, and now I'm going to do this. Values and vision. So can you turn what you've discussed into an inspiring or hopeful vision of what might be? We do that a lot at the Alberta Emerald Foundation. We focus on the hope so that we encourage others to walk on or walk away from the experience feeling uplifted, so then they take part in environmentalism, bringing it into their own personal practices. A satisfying encapsulation, so find a way to neatly reframe the case you've been making. Or narrative symmetry. So this is like the bookend or the Oreo sandwich. You start it at one place and you bring it back to that one place. Lyrical inspiration. This one can be a little bit awkward, but if you have great language skills, it might work in your benefit. This is when you use some poetic language to just sort of wrap things up. So I don't know if it would necessarily land very well, but you can always try it out. Fitting your talk into a short time limit. So the wrong way to do this. So any speaking engagement that you have, you're going to want to find out how much time you have on stage. For the Emerald speakers, it's between 8 to 10 minutes. The wrong way to fit your talk into this period of time is to include everything that you want to say, but cut down on how you say it. Overstuffed is going to make your talk underexplained. But here are some right ways. So cut back on the topics you want to cover. Less is more. Brene Brown, obviously I'm a fan of her TED Talk and all of her other work. She's appearing here a few times. She recommends planning your talk, then cutting it in half. Once you've grieved the first cut it in half again. And that's actually something that I had to do with this talk, actually an hour before we started, because I was like, oh man, this is just gonna go on forever. To remain compelling, only cover as much ground as you can within the allotted time frame, and decide on the idea that can be unpacked in that time frame, and then create your talk around that point. So you probably have a zillion ideas. Sometimes it's best to just pick one and do it really, really well. So preparing for your talk, to slide or not to slide. So having no slides is always better than having bad slides. However, the majority of talks do benefit from great slides. There are many options for ways to amplify your talk, but your first question is, do I actually need it? Coco Chanel says, take off one thing before you leave the house. I think that this applies here as well. And 1/3 of TED's most viewed talks don't actually utilize slides. But here are some elements to make some strong visuals for yourself. You can use them as a revelation point, so show something that's hard to describe. The key is to set the context, prime the audience, and then let the visuals work their magic. Run them full screen with minimal adornment. So a prime example would be like, once upon a time, I was a theater artist. Bam, there's a picture of me in high heel shoes. Whoa, the audience is instantly interested in what's going on, or at least I hope. Explain. So often the best explanations happen when words and images work together. If you want to explain something new, often the simplest, most powerful way is to show and tell. Limit each slide to a single core idea so as to not overwhelm or confuse your audience. Delight. So give your talk an aesthetic appeal. Concepts in a talk need to be limited, but images don't have to be. Remember that you don't need to explain every image that you include. So you could have multiple things going on behind you. Create some theatricality. Some tips for some great slides. So use PowerPoint, Keynote. Julie and I both use Keynote for ours. Prezi is an awesome thing if you have a little bit of money to invest in a subscription for something. It has a lot of fun animations that take you around and make the audience go ooh la la. Make sure that to update your settings to 16:19 aspect ratio. That's a typical screen size. To give your presentation a unique look, avoid using built-in templates. I actually built each of these for this. If you are showing a lot of photos, use a black background. Show photos in full bleed, so that means the entire screen. Use one typeface per presentation. Keep it simple and easy to read, Helvetica or Arial. This is an Arial if you like it, and use 24 points or larger. That's just to make sure that once it's up there, your audience is able to read it. And if you're placing text on a photo, make sure it's somewhere easy to read. It's very, it can sometimes be difficult because there's a lot of different colors going on, but if you have an area where there's a lot of white space, put dark writing there. Or if you have somewhere where there's a dark space, put some light writing there. So like white or yellow on the dark, or black, navy blue on the white. And that's the point there. So practicing your talk. This is so crucial. So start with an audience of one. Be it your partner, your best friend, your dog. Just make sure you speak out your talk before you head in front of an audience, and ask them for ruthless feedback, whether your idea came across. This also provides an opportunity to make sure everything is working the way you planned. So major situation for me is that when I'm creating presentations like this, I have it go automatically sometimes, and all of a sudden it stops and I don't know why. It's because I needed to put the click in. Isn't it better to know that beforehand than when I get on stage to actually do a presentation? Many things can go wrong in the moment. Julian said it. It's good to have that improvisational skill to make sure that you're able to roll the punches. But if you're doing some preparation beforehand, the risk of them can be minimized. So scripting. So scripting is when we're talking about, do you want to go up and be completely improvised, or do you want to have things written out and have them memorized? So your two options would be to write out the talk in full as a complete script to be read, memorized, or a combination of the two. Or you can have a structure. So comparing Julian's presentation to mine, Julian was a little bit more structured, where he had his key points that he needed to talk to, where mine is a little bit more scripted, where I have specific things that I've written out that I'm now elaborating on. There's some potential risks. So scripted, if you're relying too much on your script, that can start to feel awkward because it can disconnect your audience. But going unscripted can also present some issues, because in the moment you'll be nervous, you'll struggle to find the words that you're looking for. You may leave out something crucial. You may even go over your time slot. And I have been a victim to all of those. I once performed a show, my very first time. I left the stage thinking it was the most amazing thing that I had done. It was a one-man show. And when I left, the person that I was working with said, "You do realize that you missed 2/3 of the script." Very, very awkward. Yeah. So make sure that you run through your presentation for a small audience, practice it, rehearse it, get it into your body, into your memory, into your muscle memory, and you'll do much better. Once you're on stage, what to wear. So pick out what you're going to wear in advance. And I would even say rehearse in that. It's like a dress rehearsal. Worst thing would be if you got on stage and say you had like a piece of Velcro that kept on going off, and how awkward that would be. Or all of a sudden something isn't fitting right. So wear it before, make sure you feel comfortable. Go with some bold colors. The audience will love it. You'll seem more appealing. It looks better on camera as well. Avoid jangly jewelry. So that can make a lot of noise, that can be distracting. And fitted it is always better than baggy. It just gives you a more clean look. Get your head in the game. So beforehand, use your fear as motivation. Let it encourage you to practice and hone your talk. Let your body help you. Remember to breathe and stretch. Stretching is so important for an actor, for everyone, just to like release the tension. Drink water. You'll see it in comedy shows. They always have their bottle of water there, and it's okay to have that. Avoid an empty stomach. Get some healthy food in your system before you go on. I experience low blood sugar, and it's very hard to give talks and form ideas once that's gone off for me. So, highly recommend to make sure that you've eaten. Remember the power of vulnerability. So, the more vulnerable you are, the more human you are, and the more your audience is going to connect with you. Find friends in the audience. So, if you're presenting to a group of people, you might want to find a familiar face or a friendly face that you can connect with. Just don't focus solely on that person. So, if it's one, you want to make sure that you're creating friends with the rest of the room too. Otherwise, it'll seem like something pretty intimate is going on there, and it might be confusing to the rest of the audience and very awkward to that one person. And if you are presenting online like we are today, think about presenting to a single person and what that person might look like. And have a backup plan. If you're worried about things going wrong, have an idea in advance of how you might handle it. I have an experience where I was in a one-man show. Every single performance that I did, there was a phone that went off, and it drove me nuts. And finally, I had to work out how I was going to respond if somebody's cell phone went off. And it actually did, and worked in my advantage to have something funny to say. Another good thing to think about is that technical elements, everything can go wrong. You can forget your laptop at home. You can forget your USB. Just make sure that you have different ways of bringing your talk. Send it to the host beforehand. Show up with your USB. Have it on your Google Drive. Just make sure that you have a backup plan. So set up so you can use your slides as your guide. So that's sort of what I'm doing here. Rather than having cards that I'm reading off of, I'm just using my slides to guide me through the talk. You can also use a smartphone or a tablet, but be careful with that. I have used notes on my phone and have deleted them multiple times before I went on stage. Very awkward. Find out if you will be using a teleprompter, and confirm the height of the teleprompter before you go on, because if it's out of line, you won't be able to see your notes. Find out if you'll be using a microphone, and if there is a podium, it's recommended not to stand behind it for the entire talk. You can use it as sort of like a home base, but people want to see you. So some final thoughts here. You have something important to say. Your everyday is fascinating. Stay authentic to yourself and your voice. Be your audience's tour guide through your idea. And finally, it's okay to be nervous. In all honesty, I've been nervous for this entire thing. Vulnerability creates some connection.